Cyberfunk is what many believe to be the spiritual sequel to Jet Set Radio and Jetsetradio.Future. The game is unique in its own way with original story, gameplay and characters, but still manages to capture the essence of the original game's atmosphere and art direction. Sega recently announced that they themselves are working on a new Jet Set Radio game, whether a remake or a sequel that will surely capture its audience and release them. I myself will be tuning in. The vibe that Jet Set Radio and bombrushcyberfunk gives off is a very artistic one. The gameplay is literally rolling around and spray painting entire cities, until every corner is covered in the street gang's graffiti. The core foundation of these games' story is that you play as artists, criminals but still artists, who refuse to give up on their lives of crime to pursue a legal artist lifestyle or start a legitimate arts company. The games never explain why though. Maybe it was just part of the idea that Sega came up with. Street gangs who use graffiti and roll around on rollerblades is a cool concept that sells to younger audiences. But concluding that the concept was just one composed and measured by coolness would also ignore the quote-unquote message that is prevalent throughout the game's story. In bombrushcyberfunk, near the end of the game, the plot is uncovered. The protagonist learns that one of his former companions seeks to control the underground by flipping it over and making it the new surface world, legalizing graffiti. This is what the main antagonist of this game seeks to do, legalizing graffiti to control what was the underworld. Every street gang and every graffiti artist is against this idea. Why? Before the protagonist fights the final boss, his former companion working to legalize graffiti, he says this: graffiti would be hella boring if it was legal. Why?
Let's get scratching.
The Jet Set Radio games both follow a simple yet complicated plot where local and rival street gangs fight over territory in Tokyo, a city filled with uncanny and colorful characters. How they claim territory through their art, graffiti. The player picks a character of their choice from the gang called the GGs and goes on a mission to cover a rival gang's territory's graffiti. The story doesn't end there though, as the pirate radio station Jet Set Radio gathers and seeks out intel that exposes the rival street gangs and their affiliations with the Rokaku Group, a financial conglomerate who is plotting to use different forms of art, such as music, to control the masses of Tokyo. This information leads the GGs to further uncovering the truth behind their cooperation and the conglomerate's plot to use art as their own weapon and financial source. I think it's important to point out that the overtly brutal police that literally sends out tanks to fight off kids with rollerblades is a private police force, the Rokaku Police, under the Rokaku Group. And this will further prove my point later on in the video. From the story, one can make the assumption that Jet Set Radio is trying to convey a message about freedom of expression through art. Art's a weapon of resistance. While the street gangs are fighting against one another, the Rokaku Group is constantly trying to silence their art, while cooperating with some of the gangs to fight off resistance in the underworld. This proves how authorities, like the Rokaku Group, understands and fears the power that art holds within itself, while doing everything in their power to control it. The reason why art holds so much power is simple. Art is the expression of self. Every piece of art is essentially just someone expressing themselves in any form. Think of dancing, painting or drawing, music, literature, etc. It's expressive and shaped by inner thoughts. Therefore, the art will inevitably come with a message. The fact that everybody can express themselves not just by words, but by art, with proficiently crafted pieces that naturally draws people's attention through aesthetics, is what makes it so powerful. It has the power to move people, unite or scatter them, attract or repulse them. Art is never static and always changes throughout time, not merely because the masses' tastes have changed, but because society and its features did. Every artist is a being in society that can affect and be affected by society they live in. Art changes because what the artist expresses has changed, all changing to express their thoughts on society. Graffiti functions as, number one, an expression of every gang's and gang member's individuality. The street gangs fight over territory by marking the territory with their expressions, essentially. They don't fight over territory for money or control, all they want is expressive playground. And two, a weapon against authority. As I mentioned before, the Rokaku Police under the Rokaku Group is for the most part the antagonistic force during gameplay. They send out policemen armed with battalions, police dogs, tanks, and even choppers to stop the gangs tagging all over Tokyo. You can see this as just police against gangs as you play as naive kids, almost like Subway Surfers. However, from a narrative standpoint, this could be seen as the rebellious youth weaponizing themselves with art to combat authoritarian parts of society whom they believe to be a threat against their passion, graffiti. I want you to think of an overtly artistic but commercialized city like Tokyo, Night City from Cyberfunk, hell even Tokyo from jetsetradio. Sure, they are beautiful with their colorful lighting, ambient but front-facing charm and almost dystopian-like dynamics. This is commercialized art with the only intent to increase consumerism. All the colorful lights and signs are advertisements. The charm is strategically planned out to attract you as the customer to the commercial district. The dystopian dynamic comes from the fact that people are amazed and stunned by the beauty of this. They are happy to be consumers. All the artistic aspects of these cities are boiled down to marketing and advertisements. The art here isn't an expression of individuals' individuality. It's instead a tool for capitalism. But if there's no expression, how come it's so beautiful? The short answer is that it's designed to be beautiful and attract people. It's not manufactured beauty. The marketing strategists have analyzed art and beauty and studied how they can use it. It's like a tool that can strategically be used as a weapon or a piece of decoration. This doesn't make it less beautiful, but it strips art away from its core, if this is the only intent for it. This is why in jetsetradio, both the GGs and Rokaku group want to control the art. One for expressing their individuality, and one for simply increasing its customers' consumerism. This is why the rebellious youth fights off the financial conglomerates, to protect the art's expressive value from commercialism, and to put it bluntly, from capitalism. The ongoing genocide in Gaza has killed more than 45,000 people. More than 14,500 were youngsters, according to the UN, as of the 16th December this year. According to Amnesty International, 90% of the entire population has been displaced and about 100,000 people have been wounded. This isn't just another thing happening in the Middle East, this is innocent people dying. I have linked a petition to be signed by Amnesty International, an article from UN News, and the Creators for Palestine fundraiser on the description of this video. It's important to never stop talking about what is happening around the world, as even though it may not be in your country or impact you specifically, it is still human beings that suffer from these atrocities. I wish and pray for all of the displaced and lost in Gaza, but wishing is only thoughtful. Actions lead to results. Please sign any petition and donate if you can. Thank you for your time. So, how would graffiti look like if it was legal in these games? First off, ownership. Ownership would be essential. Sure, graffiti artists still have some form of ownership. They tag their signature somewhere to let people know that it's them. But that doesn't make it private property. That's just personal property. With private property comes a lot of complicated processes. Think of record labels. Any artist under the record label gives their music right to the label. The record label that basically controls most of the music that is being put out on larger scales for larger audiences have to choose what artists to sign. The choices are mostly made up by what artist will bring them the most profit. This of course has benefits, like the artist being able to work with other musicians in the label and getting access to studios and top producers. But that's about it. Let's not forget that a musician's individuality lives down when working in the same environment as other musicians who are also signed to the same label, because they as well have a great potential for profit. This is probably also how the graffiti industry will look. Graffiti labels choosing what artists to sign, not due to their expressive nature, but for their ability to bring in profit to the label. Street graffiti will become yet another artistic industry stained by commercialism, inevitably losing a lot of its expressive potential for the time being. So to answer the question, would legalized graffiti be hella boring? Well, kinda. It wouldn't be such a rebellious yet artistic industry as it is today. Games like jetsetradio and bombrushcyberfunk would probably never be about graffiti, because what would even be the point? The story about rebellion and freedom would just be another make it to the top pop idol like games where the Rokaku group has a graffiti label, signs all the former street gangs and turns them into money-making machines, stripping them from their passion by altering their motives from self-expression to profit. A word like that would be hella boring, and I wouldn't enjoy games or other forms of media about graffiti.
All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government. Otherwise, they can do anything they want.
And so what do you have to do?
You have to adhere to a very narrow line of commercialism.